As Putin maneuvers and lies, Trump sets deadlines. Will Istanbul talks maybe deliver real results? These and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, a TV host of YouTube channels Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, and also local elected official in Wisconsin. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for your time and for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
US President Donald Trump's latest statements about the war in Ukraine are becoming increasingly absurd. Despite his verbal attack on Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, the American leader is in no hurry to take decisive action, writes CNN. It is noted that the Kremlin doesn't believe that the Trump administration is ready to impose tough sanctions against Russia as well as increase pressure. In Moscow, his criticism of the massive Russian drone attacks on Ukraine was called emotional overload. So really, we see that Trump cannot make any strong decision, and the Atlantic also adds that has Trump fallen out of love with Putin, like we talk every time between us, Yuri, about this this mad love. Has Trump fallen out of love with Putin, and where might these signs of strain lead?
I think that is what we're all hoping for, is that he actually has fallen, that this bromance is over. I mean, bromance, it seems like between Elon Musk and Donald Trump could be over, so why not between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin? Well, in part because they have a much longer and much more solid relationship than with Elon Musk. I think Vladimir Putin probably invested far more than Elon Musk into Donald Trump, and I'm sure Donald Trump knows how much and has appreciation for it. But it's ironic to me because when we discuss the 2 weeks part of this equation, and this article does a very nice job of summarizing, where we are and how we got there. It's ironic because Ukrainians, actually, in my experience, are very familiar with the 2-week idea because they used to, well, still kind of sort of, have this the personality who was broadcasting in the beginning of the invasion of 2022 when he was telling people that everything will be over in just a couple of weeks. Just hang in there. On some level, it was kind of useful because it was first 2 weeks for, first few months of the invasion. But pretty soon, I think people caught up to the fact that this was really just a fake information of just 2 more weeks. His name is Arestovich. And so because of this, Ukrainians got very acutely aware when they heard Donald Trump say 2 weeks. It sounds, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing is that there's this kind of like 2 weeks. We heard this before. And it's true. And it's also true that this is what Donald Trump says when he's not sure what's going to happen next. He had 2 weeks. This is the third 2-week stretch, which is, to me, really time that it's not even clear who he's giving these 2 weeks to, right? And I think, to me, this is 2 weeks that he's asking from Putin for 2 more weeks to try to bend Ukraine to Putin's will. And so this is 2 more weeks for Putin to provide pressure on Ukraine and see if he can get some kind of, somewhere where he's not able to get much done, but maybe 2 more weeks. But also, this is more importantly, perhaps 2 weeks for Trump administration to pressure Ukraine into agreeing to this so-called peace on Putin's terms. And to say that 2 weeks is going to be enough, it won't be, but it just buys some more time and some more time. And the question is if they really have this falling out of love, because, well, it's true that Donald Trump said that he had good relations with Putin, but it doesn't seem like he does, or at least he's not controlling his buddy very well. So on that level, it seems like perhaps Donald Trump was incorrect, but it seems like Donald Trump may have himself been disappointed because he thought he had good relations with Vladimir Putin, but it turns out that that doesn't mean that Putin is going to do anything like Trump wants. And then the question becomes, what is Trump going to do now? Because if he's going to get upset, that's one conclusion that would be really not too bad. I think this would be kind of nice if Donald Trump all of a sudden decided to out Biden and say, you know what, Biden was wrong because he was not helping Ukraine enough, and I will be anti-Biden because I will help Ukraine enough because I'm so upset at that crazy Vladimir Putin in Kremlin. That would be nice. But there's also a possibly more likely possibility that Donald Trump will just get scared and run away. we don't call him President Taco for nothing. Because Taco now stands for Trump always chickens out. And that's what traders on Wall Street, where, it's not some, politics, it's money, where they figured out that Trump always chickens out. And so they call this trade. It's a big inside outside joke that even Donald Trump has now heard, and he doesn't like it because to call him chicken, ooh. But it kind of also highlights to what extent we live in this Back to the Future 2 version of reality.
Yuri, dear Yuri, I've been quoting for days Republican Senator ChuckGrassly because he told that he really believed that President Trump sincerely thought his friendship with Putin would help end the war. But if so, it's time to return sanctions so strong that Putin will know game over. But game over can be for Trump if he doesn't realize all these things about ChuckGrassly remind him.
I think that it's nice that 91-year-old Senator Grassley is so firm about expressing his opinion on Twitter, X, whatever. But when, I like most reading his social media there and seeing what kind of comments people left. My favorite one was perhaps this, Mr. Grassley should contact his senator. Because the irony of this is that this is United States Senator who has voted to support this president, and now he is objecting. Why is he objecting? Is he objecting because he realizes that this policy is extremely harmful to the United States? Or is he concerned about political backlash? I think that a 91-year-old politician concerned about political backlash is a little strange. So I think it's if Mr. Grassley, Senator Grassley, truly feels so strongly about this, he should back up with actions, because the current legislation, Donald Trump doesn't even need the current legislation being discussed in the Senate to bring out new sanctions against Putin, because those sanctions have already been the mechanisms for them, likely targets. A lot of it's already been outdone. Work has been done by the Biden administration, dare I say. And so if President Trump wanted to put pressure on Russia, he doesn't even need this new legislation. But it seems like it's part of his policy where he can let people like Lindsey Graham and Chuck Grassley be the bad cops, while Donald Trump is the good cop trying to persuade Putin to please stop this war one way or another. And there's this old famous Stalin expression, no person, no problem. And I feel that Donald Trump is looking at Ukraine in a very similar approach. No country, no problem. And all of this leads us to this very clearly outlined setup where Ukraine is being used as a kind of an exchange coin here to kind of give to Russia, while persuading European allies that they need to hang on to, for NATO, to Donald Trump for dear life. They need to pay more, but if they want to have protection against the Russians, then, they better pay Donald. And then Donald, if he's nice, will protect them against the evil, Vladimir, who is walking outside and just looks to scare those and take over those Europeans. So, in that setup, Ukraine is just being used kind of like as a sacrifice. Look at what happens with those that stand in our way. And if this setup works, we're all in trouble. But luckily, it seems that plenty of European leaders are recognizing this setup and are not interested in being played. Whether they have the capability to withstand the pressure is a challenge that right now, for instance, Harvard University is looking to answer. Do they have ability to withstand the pressure from United States government? And can Ukraine withstand Russian assault with just European support? This is a very, very important question that needs to be answered positively, and that has to be answered positively because there's no other answer. But with this president, the challenges in front of everyone are getting that much harder.
Ukraine peace plan includes a full ceasefire, land, sea, air, with international monitoring. But Russia is refusing to show its hand ahead of Monday's Istanbul talks. Kiev fears a diplomatic ambush, and New York Times uncovers Ukraine's peace proposal and this plan to monitor ceasefire with Russia. In its ceasefire document, Ukraine proposes a comprehensive ceasefire. It includes a ceasefire on land, sea, and air, according to the New York Times, as we see now. But the New York Times also writes that Ukrainian officials believe that Russia may try to lure their delegation into a trap by offering conditions that Kiev cannot accept. How realistic is this plan if Russia doesn't need to stop the war at all, as we understand? And what is Russia counted on, trying to drag us into a trap, since we understand all this and will definitely not fall into it?
I think that there's a certain, well, dare I say, disrespect that Russia has for Ukraine. I think that we see this disrespect for the last 3.5 years. And disrespect, when it's based on ignorance, is going to lead to certain consequences, like all those Russian soldiers that have perished because their leader made a terrible, stupid decision. So I think that the ignorance and disrespect that Russia is showing and thinking that they can manipulate Ukraine is one way to fight it is, frankly, with transparency and to be upfront about the challenges and understanding that Ukraine, even if Ukrainian delegation agrees to something, the country of Ukraine will never agree to capitulation, will never agree to its own genocide. And so expecting to fool a delegation, it is important to acknowledge that Ukraine needs to have, at such a negotiation, I would expect to have somebody on Ukraine's side, because right now this is really seeming like an attempt to corner Ukraine into submission to Russia. And that's something that we just now, Donald Trump give himself and Putin another 2 weeks to accomplish. To say that this is going to occur because they're going to, you can, I think of Abraham Lincoln, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And in this situation, if they're going to try to sneak by something, a delegation that it has no intention. I mean, if this was truly a group that was like, yes, we think this is a great idea, and the rest of the country think this is a bad idea, then you have Maidan. Then you have this tearing apart of the country, and this is something that right now Putin would very much appreciate. But right now, the government in Ukraine is not such that it is going to take a position that's going to be different from the popular position in the country. And I think lack of understanding those basic dynamics, I think it just shows lack of respect. And again, that's going to lead to consequences.
But we see that the U.S. delegation will not be present at the second round of negotiations again. Yes, how we mentioned. Why won't it happen? It's because Russia demands it again. And it's so unusual that Russia can say conditions to United States of America and not in the first time. So why Russia can show such behavior without any consequences?
I think because Donald Trump doesn't like to deliver not the best news and be in something that is not looking like a winning venture. He wants to be part of success, and this is a negotiation that is destined to fail. And why would Donald Trump want to be a part of it? Why would he want his administration to be a part of it when all he can do is provide pressure on Ukraine? And perhaps they decided that the best way to provide pressure on Ukraine is just not give any support from the United States whatsoever, not even in words, not even in presence, just get Americans out of there. This seems like what Russia is trying to do to Ukraine in real time. So I think this is, it's also highlighting the ignorance and the impotence of American leadership. which is dreadful and terrible and dispiriting, I think, for many Americans to observe. Because rather than projecting strength, maybe foolish strength, maybe misguided strength, but strength, the United States under this presidency is projecting weakness, whether it's projecting weakness in trade policies, whether it's projecting weakness in foreign policy. This is something that I feel is very deeply embarrassing to a lot of Americans. And to say that, this is just another delegation not showing up to another negotiation session, I think the damage is far greater than that.
Turkey proposes meeting of Zelensky, Putin, Trump under Erdogan's leadership after new talks in Istanbul. The country's foreign minister, Hakan Fidan, said that such a meeting could be the next step after possible new talks between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul, which could take place as early as next week. We know that Hakan Fidan had meetings in Moscow, then he has his visit in Ukrainian capital in Kiev, and he added that real progress is possible if their parties remain at the negotiation table. Dmitry Peskov, press secretary of Russian dictator Putin, told that yes, we can assess such possibility, and we think about meeting between Putin, Zelensky, Trump, and Yuri. Putin only needs to meet with Trump, we know, and Trump wants such meeting with Putin. I agree with you in such moments always. So does Trump continue to want to meet with Putin? Maybe something has changed considering his friend's behavior, because Trump told that he is angry about Putin's behavior.
All right, well, let's take this apart and start with Turkey, because I think it is important. And what Turkey is trying to do and what Putin is trying to do with Turkey is something that I feel Ukrainians really do not want to, frankly, acknowledge. And that is an attempt by Turkey and Russia to engage in this post-Ukraine diplomacy. Now, there's going to be, yes, visit from Turkey Foreign Secretary, whatever he's called, to Kiev, but it's for consultations. The decisions are being made elsewhere. And this is a very worrying sign, because this is not highlighting that there's another possible ally of Ukraine that is showing up. This is somebody else who's looking to possibly benefit from what Putin perceives as his victory. And so on that level, I think that there is not much good that I see in those kinds of visits and communications and that style of diplomacy. Frankly, because I think if a country is trying to show that it is supporting Ukraine, it needs to demonstrate its respect, I guess, respect for Ukrainian opinion. And what is Ukraine's point of view? And if it's just for consultations, then it's not really that level of respect that I think a country that has been bravely fighting for its survival and remains independent after such a long war deserves. So that brings us to Trump and Putin and their desire for meeting. I like Vitaly Portnikov's point of view that the reason that Putin doesn't want to meet with Trump is because he doesn't have anything to offer him. And it's almost like a catfishing situation where there's a appeal to attempt to get something out of this person that's being schemed without actually revealing yourself in person, because, well, that could be somebody in some other country that totally or whatever, not the person that you think they are. And it's called catfishing. And so in this situation, Putin is avoiding meeting Trump, and Trump really wants to meet Putin. We know Trump is disappointed because he thought that he had good relations with Putin and Putin would listen to him and end the war in 24 hours or whatever. That didn't happen. But Trump continues to be interested. And this is, it's a worrying sign, because I think that this kind of a obsession is very obvious now to everyone. You know, for a long time, I think the people didn't want to see it, and it was kind of possible to ignore, because Donald Trump was making at least contradictory messages during the campaign. But since the election, since he's been in the White House, now he clearly says that if it wouldn't be for him, Russia would be in deep doo-doo. And so it's only thanks to Donald Trump, which of course makes everyone like, wonder, so Russia would have like lost this war if it would be for Donald. Like I mean, this is what he's saying, and to expect him to say, you know what, I don't think Putin is a good guy, or to expect anything different from what we saw in Helsinki in 18 is unrealistic. Anytime those two meet, anytime they speak, more trouble occurs, because what we see fundamentally with American administration, with this president, is that they should have the cleanest hands, because they keep washing their hands of everything, except that they're just covered in blood at the same time, because when they walk away, people die, whether it's because they walk away from Ukraine, whether it's because they walk away from USAID and there's children dying in Africa and other places because United States is decided that to wash its hands of its sense of responsibility, because we want to be like Putin. This is, I think, what I said after the election. It's a question of how far we're going to get before American people are just going to vomit. Because what we hear from this president is so deeply un-American, is so deeply disturbing to people in this country. And of course, when Ukrainians ask me, like, so where's the police? Where are the nurses? What's going on with this president? I explain to them that people have been appointed to appropriate positions to make sure that none of that shall occur. And even likely Surgeon General of the United States, it's a conspiracy nut. So to say that those are going to be people that are going to put restraints on Donald Trump, sorry, ain't gonna happen. But his policies are deeply destructive, and America is not Russia. I know that means that we're much more organized and much more efficient, but also we're very experienced with freedom. And I'm really counting on the United States to pull this one out, because you know what, as they say in Russia, rescuing of those drowning is the responsibility of those drowning. It's a little harsh. But, you know, when you think about it, who's going to come and rescue the United States? Mars? I don't think so.
So, Yuri, and we see that Keith Kellogg, special envoy of Donald Trump, support, in fact, Russia's demand for non-expansion of NATO. Why? For what?
That seems like a future list of priorities for Russia. I am just puzzled, or I guess hopeful, let's put it this way, because not all conversations are public, that all the republics that were used to be part of Soviet Union do not have some kind of a communication process in place to deal with the fact that Russia wants to reabsorb all of them. And starting with Ukraine, followed by Moldova, followed by Georgia, as those are the countries specifically already outlined on the list of demands, which means that Russia is dripping, drooling at the possibility and what it sees as likelihood of expanding its borders once again. When we have a representative a special representative of the United States president who is promoting Kremlin's talking points, I guess after X amount of time, it should no longer be a surprise, and therefore I hope it's not a surprise. But I think this is just highlighting to what extent Russia feels like they, I feel like I'm quoting a lot of Russian expressions today, but grabbing God by the beard is another good Russian example in my, sorry, I don't know many Ukrainian expressions, but that's what, they feel like they grabbed God by the beard and they can give all sorts of directions. Now we're back in 2022 before the big invasion even started, and Russia feels like it can dictate that half-naked Putin is on a horse again, and here we go riding away. Kiev in 3 days. Didn't work before, not going to work now, but it's deeply embarrassing for the United States to be promoting this defeatist point of view.
Yuri, we have a lot of risks and challenges. Thank you for your explanation, for your thoughts and your position, and for your time. See you next week. Take care.
Take care.
Yuri Rashkin, TV host of YouTube channels Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, and a local elected official in Wisconsin. My name is Irina Uzlova. Guys, thank you for joining us. Subscribe to our YouTube channels. Believe in yourself, believe in Ukraine. We will win. Bye.